Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. I'm Nikki, and here is your Mailbag Monday question of the week. So this week's question was from some new folks that are just getting started in homesteading, and they've got a couple acres of land, and they're wondering what is the best Hoofstock to start with, what's easiest, and what do we recommend for newbies. So overall, for Hoofstock, the bigger the livestock, the less tight the fence has to be. I guess that's the best way to put it. So if you've just got barbed wire and that kind of stuff, you can actually start with a cow or two. There is a good size learning curve with bovine, and they do tend to be pretty expensive to feed, especially if you're dealing with something like the hay crisis and drought that we've got here in the West. I always recommend that you start with something that's a little bit smaller and a little bit more manageable, because you're going to have to do some maintenance, right? You're going to need to do shots, worming, trim hooves, maybe shear, whatever it is that your particular animal requires. Now, for my pick for small animals or for small hoofstock, I'm always going to go with goats. I think that the goat is just the most multi-purpose animal you can get, right? You can do them for milk, you can do them for meat. I'm pretty partial to goat cheese. I like that kind of thing. The big thing for me with goats is that they'll eat just about anything. And I know that we've got a culture of really spoiled dairy goats in this country where people only feed them alfalfa and they've got to have grain. But I'm here to tell you, they don't need it, and deep down, that's not what they want. We run ours on sagebrush and scrub, and they don't care. They love it. Goats enjoy the palate of life. So the more weeds you have, the better. If you've got a field that's pretty much grass, I would probably stick to something like sheep. And I know some people groan and they go, oh, I don't want to deal with wool. And you don't have to. There's some really great hair sheep out there. They shed completely down. They're a milk sheep or a meat sheep. So not so much on the milking end of things. So if milk is something that appeals to you, you probably want to look for a milking variety of sheep. There's lots of different stuff. You can get Icelandics. I think our Friesians are the milk sheep. But there's lots of different varieties of sheep now that do milk and make good meat animals and provide wool if that's something that appeals to you. Getting larger, you can go to miniature cattle. But like I said, the feed requirements tend to be pretty high. And I don't necessarily recommend dealing with, an animal that's 5 and 6 and 7 all the way up to 1,000 pounds if you haven't dealt with hoofstock before. The other reason to stick to something like goats and sheep, the housing requirements are much smaller. You don't have to have a great big barn for them. You can fit an awful lot of small goats into, a 10 by 10 shed. You do have to have good fencing. And really that's what it comes down to for most things. But goats and sheep in particular are known to be a bit escape artists. So you do want to make sure that you've got a minimum field fence or goat fence or whatever. They won't stay in barbed wire. They can be managed in hot wire if you do it right. You got to keep some really tight spacing because goats will crawl, and sheep are known to get spooked and run through things. So a running sheep isn't put off necessarily by shock. The other thing with with sheep and electric fences is remember that they've got to have good contact, and sometimes that wool impedes things. So there you have it. What is my overall pick for beginner hoofstock? Absolutely going to go with a goat. Just a multi-purpose animal, and they're fun, man. They've got great personalities. Horns, no horns. You can get little ones all the way up to great big ones. The sky is the limit, and it really depends on what you're looking to do. But so much fun. I mean, they've got fiber goats if that's what you want to do. I've wanted pygoras forever. So, so many options there in goats, and just a lot of fun. And, they'll eat garden scraps and all kinds of cool stuff. So really good animals. So there you go. There is my answer for this week's Mailbag Monday. If you've got other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. You can always send me an email at srhomestead@yahoo.com. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place. And, what's your pick? What do you think is the best beginner hoofstock? We'll see you next time. Happy homesteading.